Okay, it says recording now. Did you get an announcement about it or anything? Can you see it, April?
I got one on my screen saying it, giving me the option to continue or not because it's being recorded. Does that help?
Yeah,
right,
please
great.
do.
All right. Well, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the County of Santa Clara Historical Heritage Grant Program FY 2021 Technical Workshop. My name is Christian Elliott. Some of you know me already, but for those who don't, I worked for County Parks as a management analyst from 2006 until I retired in June of 2019. And one of my responsibilities was administrating the Historical Heritage Grant Program. In March of this year, just as the pandemic started, the Parks Department asked me to come back as an extra help senior management analyst to assist transitioning grant management with several analysts now working on grants for county parks. April Smith is the very capable management analyst who is handling the Historical Heritage Grant Program now, and it's a pleasure to share my knowledge and familiarity of this unique grant program with her. In addition to her work on the HHGP, she has been managing the county's all-inclusive playground grant program and the historic grant program, which are two programs funded by the general fund and are distinct from the Historical Heritage Grant Program we'll be discussing this afternoon. You'll be hearing from both of us throughout the presentation, and we're here to help guide you through this upcoming cycle. We want to make sure everyone's aware that of the chat function that's available in Zoom, and I'm going to turn it over to April, and April, maybe you can tell us about the chat feature as well.
Sure. Thanks, Christian, and hello, everybody. The chat, if you just hover over the middle of the bottom of your screen, you should have a little chat icon there, and if you click that, it'll pop up a chat box, and then any questions can be asked through there. Some questions today, if it gets pretty in-depth, we might have to take it offline, but otherwise asking questions throughout the presentation is okay. And I'm going to cover the agenda here in a moment, but we are going to have a Q&A at the end. So let me cover the agenda. We're going to have a program overview. We're going to discuss applicant eligibility, project eligibility and requirements, funding requirements, evaluation factors, and application tips. And then we're going to show you some past sample projects that the program has funded.
Okay, so what is the Historical Heritage Grant Program? The Board of Supervisors established this program in 1990 to promote historic preservation and the awareness of significant cultural, historical, and archaeological resources within Santa Clara County. The funding for this is provided through the dedication of a portion of the county park charter development funds. And there's been nearly, go back one slide, there's been nearly $7 million that has been invested so far over the past 20 years or so that the program has been in existence. And next. And the amount of funding that's available for this grant cycle is $990,000 for this fiscal year. Next. So eligible applicants. April, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. Sorry, my chat box is in the way.
Oh, okay.
That's, I got it. Eligible applicants must meet all three of the following criteria. And they must be a local public agency or nonprofit with 501c3 certification. They must also be located within the geographical limits of Santa Clara County, and also applying for a project that is also located within the geographical limits of Santa Clara County.
So both the organization and the project need to be in Santa Clara County. And the projects can be located, they must be located in a public park or on private property that is dedicated to park purposes. This is a restriction that comes from the fact that the funding for this program is coming from the County Parks Charter Fund. A public park is a park that is owned or operated by the county, a city, or other public agency, such as an open space district. Next. Now, eligible private property is land that meets all of this criteria. It's land that is actually used and dedicated to use for park purposes by deed or other long-term legal agreement. It's open to the public on a non-discriminatory basis, and it's designated for park use under the applicable general plan and zoning designation. Where the park use is established by an agreement such as a lease, the agreement has to provide for continual use for park purposes for a minimum of 20 years on a non-discriminatory basis. So if you have a lease that's already in place that is going to expire in 5 years, you would need to have that lease renewed or extend or somehow to show us that you're going to have the access to that land for at least 20 years. Excuse me. And the applicant must submit documentation from the property owner. If you do not own the property, you would have to submit documentation from the owner consenting to the project. So eligible property, this program is limited to projects involving the development of real property as opposed to personal property. Real property is land and things affixed to land that cannot be moved. Another requirement for this program is that the project must involve a locally designated historic resource protected by a city or county historic preservation ordinance. Now, if the resource has not yet been locally designated at the time of application, the applicant has to complete that designation process before the Board of Supervisors can approve any sort of award, a project agreement for your project. Okay, April, you want to talk a little bit about eligible projects?
Sure. Projects must impact designated historic resources in one or more of the following ways: stabilization, preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, and interpretation. And these are all terms that are in the Department of Interior standards. So when you look those up as part of the application process, you'll see that those are very distinct things with clear definitions. Eligible capital improvements, that would be the stabilization, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration, and those must materially extend or ensure the useful life of the asset as opposed to deferred maintenance or general maintenance. And interpretation is also allowed. That must be permanent, such as interpretive signage affixed to the land or structure rather than reports, studies, or movable objects. And just a reminder, if anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and type them in the chat. Go ahead, Christian.
Ineligible projects are projects that don't involve a historic resource, and anything that's involving reconstruction or trying to replicate something that is no longer existing, and anything that's involving purchase of real property or personal property, projects that are on personal property, and projects involving spaces used for administrative or non-public functions. So that goes back to the project needs to be open to everyone on a non-discriminatory basis.
It's
Okay?
not to say that your project couldn't involve those spaces, but they just can't be funded by the grant. So for example, if you were redoing your museum building and you had an area that was for your administrative offices and that took up 20% of the building, then that portion of the project could not be funded by the grant. So I hope that's clear.
Excellent. Excellent point, April. Thank you. Low funding priorities are projects that would be such as that we're doing state or federal code compliance, infrastructure improvements, a new construction, or interior finishes that are not part of an overall rehabilitation or restoration project. Doesn't mean that they couldn't be funded by the grant. It just means that that's going to be on the commission would consider this a lower priority. And then grantees that have previously received funding or projects that have previously received funding, those may also be given a lower priority. So projects must have all the necessary funding in place, excluding the grant amount at the time of application. And the reason for this is we want to see projects that are ready to go. Basically, you've got your project ready to go, minus the amount of the funding that you need from the grant. And so that's why we say the grant funds really cannot be used as seed money to leverage additional monies as part of a fundraising campaign. Okay, next one. This is a reimbursement grant program based upon completion of the funding agreement requirements. So there's no advanced funding in this grant program. So cash contributions are not required, or match is not required. However, projects that demonstrate a commitment to the project by providing or securing additional funding from other sources will likely receive a higher rating. In-kind contributions such as volunteered labor, administration staff time devoted to managing the project are not considered a grantee cash contribution. So factors that are going to be involved in the evaluation: protection of the historic resource, public benefit, a clear and effective scope of work, the project management capabilities, and a reasonable and complete project budget. These are all things that you're going to articulate in your grant application package.
Some tips for filling out the application, and you would want to read and follow all the instructions in the application and procedural guide. This workshop here today is designed to just be an overview, but there's a lot more information covered in the procedural guide and the application. Do not make any modifications to the order of required Appendix A items or Appendix C questions. The Appendix C, that's the actual project proposal where you're going to state your case on why the project is important and what you want to do it for, and there's specific questions in that, so you don't want to alter that, or you just want to answer the questions that are shown there. And then follow all the formatting guidelines in Appendix C as far as font size, page limits, things like that, and submit only the items that are listed in Appendix A. That's a series of the documents that are going to make up the application. No like extra items. If you have like a ebook that explains your entire thing, that's not part of it. You want to just be able to use the proposal to state the importance of your project. And
Yeah.
then because we're in the era of COVID-19, at this time, this round, we're accepting only electronic submissions. So that'll be by way of DocuSign. But
and further instructions will be given down the
yeah,
road on that. And if you haven't already, I would just urge everyone to go to our website and make sure you have downloaded the application and procedural guide. And additionally, the appendix items that you're going to be needing to complete are also going to be available. They are actually available there now in Word format so that you can download and complete those items as you prepare your application packet. Next. So important dates, the applications are due Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 by 5 p.m. Now this is just kind of a tentative timeline for how things we anticipate they will unfold. The Historical Heritage Commission, who is the body that will be reviewing all of these applications, makes eligibility determinations approximately in January and February of 2021. And then they would make their funding recommendations in April and May, and hopefully the projects would go to the Board of Supervisors in June or July. That's subject to change. Each grant cycle is a little bit different. There are issues that come up with meeting quorums and just general availability and for the commission to get out to project sites and make site visits, et cetera. And that's a rough idea of the timeline that we are anticipating at this point. So we'll talk a little bit about some sample projects briefly. The first one that we're going to show you is the Heritage Theater in Campbell, 1938, Campbell Union High School Auditorium designed by William Weeks. The school closed in 1980. It's owned now by the city of Campbell and is used as a community performing arts center. And they have received grants from us over a period of 4 years that total around $220,000 for structural restoration of the walls and the roof, for seismic repairs, interior wall refinished, and unique stenciled ceiling and tiles were restored. Next. The next one is Montalvo Arts Center in Saratoga, built in 1912 by California Senator James Phelan. Upon his passing, he left Montalvo to the people of California for the advancement of art, architecture, and cultural practice. Montalvo has served Santa Clara County since 1930. And this particular project here was for restoring the villa doors and lanterns, and it was a grant in 2015 for about $22,000. And you'll note one of the pictures there, they show their acknowledgement plaque. And an acknowledgement plaque is a requirement of this program before a project is considered complete. Next is the another project that was done at Villa Montalvo in 2013, and this was the Lower Great Lawn Steps Restoration Project. It involved manufacturing custom chafers for concrete work, mill custom forms, and pouring new steps. That was completed, as I said, in 2013. It was about $59,000. And the next project is in Mountain View, and it's the Immigrant House. And it was a grant in 2016. And the grant provided funds for carpentry, the rehabilitation of windows, new roof shingles, gutters and downspouts, and wallpaper and paint finishes. In the 1930s and 40s, this house provided a low-cost place to live for some of the many immigrant workers who came to the area. And then finally, we'll show you the Sea Scout building in Palo Alto. And this was built around 1941 in the streamlined, modern style. It's the former home to the local Sea Scouts, which was an offshoot of the Boy Scouts that taught boys and girls how to excel in water activities like sailing, sea customs, compass reading, etc. And it's now the site of the Environmental Volunteer Eco Center. And they received a grant in 2007 for restoration of the promenade and bridge decks. So I'm looking in the chat window, and I've received a question to me about how the grant funding will be distributed. Is all 990K going to one applicant demonstrating the need, or is the total going to be split into smaller amounts depending on the eligible applicants? And that's a very good question, and I would say that it is largely dependent on how many applications are received. There is no particular rule that they will divide the funds equally amongst all of the applications that are received. It has to do with how the commission views the historic need of the need within a particular project. They might be inclined to fund more of one project and less of another. It just varies quite a bit. Hope that's a little bit helpful there. More information is available on our website, parkhere.org. You can search for HHGP at the top. That will take you to the page with the procedural guide as well as the appendices that I mentioned. We will also have a technical workshop located as well. The recording of that will be available there. And I'm seeing another question here. For past applicants, what differences exist this year that we should be aware of? I am not aware of any differences this year from previous rounds. There have been no major changes to the program requirements from previous rounds. Sure. Any other questions, April? Are you aware of any? And of course, you can email us with any questions to grant@prk.sccgov.org, which will go to April and I both monitor that mailbox, and we'll be happy to take any other questions that you might have. Are there any other questions? I encourage you all to please feel free to send us some more. Does mothballing of a historic structure qualify? I don't know offhand. I would have to, we'd have to look into the particulars of that. I think it could be problematic if public access, if it's not available to the public. While mothballing is it could be an important aspect to save a building, I think the commission would be weighing the factors of public accessibility before making a determination on that. And thank you, Laura. I encourage new applicants to ask for help. And absolutely, April, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. We're very happy to help. Whether you have questions here today or you think about them later, we're happy to answer those. And definitely for your application, I would encourage you to look at the application packet early. There's some things in there that you would need like a resolution from your board, or things that may take some time. So although October seems like it's a ways off, there's a lot of things that are involved in the application. So I'd encourage you to get those things in order early. And we're happy to, we can't help you write your application, but if you wanted to, if you got it done early and you wanted to send it to us to kind of look it over and see if anything was missing, we can provide that feedback to you. And
yes, indeed. We would be happy to do that. And as April mentioned, we've allowed this longer window timeline to prepare applications because there are things which are required. The local designation, that can be a process that takes time. Getting a governing body resolution, property owner approval if it's applicable to your particular project, and then of course writing the project proposal and giving some in-depth responses to those questions there. So we encourage you to take advantage of this time to put together a great application, but do ask us questions early, and that's would be recommended. Okay, we've got another couple more questions here. Are you seeing them, April, or no?
I see one here from Sean. Has the county projected potential impacts to grant funding in the next fiscal year due to COVID? Will there be potential funding next year? Go ahead, Christian.
I'm just going to say that's really difficult to say. This funding is coming from the County Parks Charter Fund, and this money has been set aside. And I don't know what the next fiscal year will bring. My suspicion is that it will be substantially less money. The amount of available funding available in this cycle is the result of funding from 2 different fiscal years, which is why the amount of available funding is as high as it is. It is normally not this high. April, do you have anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, sometimes it could be like $90,000. It's been, $300,000 or $400,000. So this is an unusually high amount. And I agree with Christian. We can't really predict what's happening for next year, but these funds that are being available here are pretty secure. So
yeah, they are secure.
So get your applications in.
Yeah. And there was the question about, is a structural evaluation of the resource an eligible grant expense? And I would say no, that is not. That's kind of at the, and I'm trying to look in the procedural guide about that. There is a particular item where that is addressed. April, or do you know where it talks about structural evaluations and so forth, that kind of projects at the design phase?
Yeah, it's, I don't know exactly what page it's on in the procedural guide, but
yeah, I'm trying to find it really quickly right now. But the short answer is most likely no. Deborah, hello, Deborah. I look forward to meeting you sometime. I remember Mel, and welcome. Deborah's asking, would you be able to describe the typical timeline for listing a site as a historical site? And unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, because it would be something that is done with county planning department. We in the Parks Department administrate this program, but we are not involved in the historic designation process. That would be done through the county planning office. I'm sorry, I can't give you more information on that. Any other questions? April, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I'm glad that we had a good turnout today, and hopefully we'll see a lot of applications.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate again that this is pretty a high-level overview of the process. You really do need to take a look at the procedural guide. You'll see things, requirements in there about insurance, prevailing wages, and other things which you need to be aware of before you know, applying for one of these projects. CEQA also, we didn't mention CEQA. CEQA is definitely a requirement for submitting an application. Grant projects require compliance with CEQA, and that must be submitted at the time of application. That's another reason why we have this long window from when we release the application packet to when the applications are due. CEQA can sometimes take time, as in addition to some of these other things that are required, like the historic designation and the other items that we've talked about.
We've got a couple more questions, Christian. It's does the historical resource have to be a registered historical resource, or can it just be eligible? So at the time of application, it doesn't have to be registered, but you no funds can be awarded until it is designated. Do I have that right, Christian?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
As far as whether it has to be a registered historical resource or just be eligible, I was saying that it's at the time of application, you have to have started that process.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be designated at the time of the October 22nd application due date, but before any funds can be awarded,
yes,
it does have to be designated.
Absolutely, yeah, that is correct, yes. And Laura asked about prevailing wages, and under this program, a grant project is considered a public work within the meaning of the labor code, to which there's provisions which apply, and grantees need to comply with the applicable provisions of the labor code, including paying prevailing wages. So that is something that that our county council does follow up on. We do get questions about it, and it's something that you work out with your contractor to ensure and certify that your contractor is paying prevailing wages on your project.
And then we have a question from Sean. Is the grant limited to structures? Could funding be used for interpretive signage for a historic landmark orchard?
And yes, it could, as long as the signage is permanent and permanently affixed, and assuming that the area that it's a historic landmark. Yes, that could qualify.
Do we have any more questions? I think we got them all in there.
Yeah, excellent questions, everyone. Thank you very much. So again, please feel free to reach out to us. We will be delighted to do all that we can to assist you through the process. We'd love to see some great, and we know there's a great need out there. We know that this project may be a little bit limited in terms of who we can help, but for those that we can, we really want to ensure that you have great success with the Historical Heritage Commission in moving forward. So again, don't hesitate to reach out to us, please. And thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you very much.
All right. Best wishes to everyone. Thank you so much.